Okay, I have opened up the broadcast and it is live on all the social media platforms as well. So I'll just do a couple of announcements since we have a couple of minutes still. So the friends who are watching this video on social media or who are live with us on Zoom, in case if you have any questions, you can ask over there. Towards the second half of the session, we'll take up those questions. Else, we will be sharing our LinkedIn thread where all the speakers are tagged. So in case if you want to have more questions which you are not able to pick up during the sessions, you can ask those questions over those LinkedIn thread. And first of all, for pulling off any program, the most important part is having great speakers. So thank you so much, everyone, for accepting the invite and committing your time to interact with the founders and the aspiring product managers.
Thanks for having us, Jatin.
Yes. So this is like yesterday we had 8 sessions and this is the third one of today. So this is the 11th session in 2 days.
Good.
So in a way, we start with our Australia speakers from Australia, Singapore, India. Now we are mid-Europe. In the evening, we'll go to US.
Hello.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining in. So
Thanks for inviting me.
So I'll just get started with my introduction. So even if those who joined exactly on time, they will not miss the actual session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I'm Jatin. I'm one of the co-founder of eChai Network. So this program is organized as part of CoRise Summit, which eChai Network and Vandanas Foundation are co-hosting it. This is a sincere and committed effort to bring diverse set of speakers from all over the world and interact with the founders or aspiring professionals who would want to get into specific themes that we have. So this particular session will be moderated by Vanipriya. So with this, my guest appearance in this session is over. Vanipriya, if you can just briefly introduce yourself first so people get more context and then you take this lead. Yes.
Hey, thanks, Jatin. Lovely meeting the ladies for this session here. I'm Vanipriya. I am currently the director of Full Potential Solutions. I handle products. I've been an entrepreneur and I've handled multiple products in different domains. And it's very exciting to be part of this panel wherein we have speakers from all over the globe. And I think our product management lessons, apart from being from different companies, the culture is also going to be a big part of, as we have built teams, we've realized that forming the product culture in our companies has been very essential. So it's going to be interesting to hear all these stories from all of us in this panel. So quickly, before we jump into the actual session, let's have one round of intros so that the attendees can understand who we are and where we are from. All right, we'll start with Valentina.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's really cool to be on a panel with that many women. That doesn't happen too often in this space. So thank you very much for making that happen. I'm Empress of product at Klaus, which is a quality assurance tool for support agents. And we are a remote first team. So the company is based in Tallinn and we have an office there for those who live there and want to go there, but it's completely optional. And I operate the product team from Spain. And if you have one person remote, our philosophy is then we just pretend everyone is remote, so to level the playing field. I've been with Klaus for about a year now, so I basically started the entire product from zero, because when I started, it was the first funding came already in, but there were no structures in place yet. So many of the things that I started doing was like making things work so that they don't depend too much on people, but that we can rely on processes. We are now at 23 people, 30% are outside of the office, or rather outside of Estonia, and the rest is in Estonia. And yeah, the remote first is actually very helpful when suddenly a pandemic hits, because you can just continue working as usual without too much disruption. And I'm very happy to be here.
Right, thanks, Valentina. So yeah, I think I forgot where I'm mentioning where I'm from. So I'm basically based out of Chennai in India. And yeah, we've been all through remote since the pandemic, but we have offices in Philippines and in the US. So we are kind of used to working part remotely and part in the office, but then it's been all throughout remote since the pandemic started in March. We took an early decision of getting home with all the desktops and stuff like that. So it's been an interesting challenge to understand how to set up security, compliance, all of that from a work from home environment. So that's been an interesting 6 months so far. Yeah, so let me quickly jump to Evgeniya.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Evgeniya, and I'm a head of product at Platinumlist. Platinumlist is a ticketing platform operating in the Gulf region and the Middle East. And well, we are B2C and B2B, so basically we sell tickets for various events to people on the one hand, and on another hand, we also provide various solutions to event organizers. And it has been a really interesting time for us. So basically, like, we have a few offices around the world, which is UAE, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines. Those are like the sales offices. And then we also have an office in Ukraine, and many people working across the world, like in Russia and some other countries. So, and the COVID times were really crazy for us, since we were only selling tickets for offline events. And yeah, there were so many interesting things happening, which I hopefully will share with you like later on during this session.
Thanks, Evgeniya. Let's quickly jump to Irina.
Hi, I am Irina. I am head of product at sennder. sennder is a company that brings together logistics, freight, well, let's say carriers and shippers to make it easy. So people who want to ship something, and then people who have trucks would like to execute it. And we are doing this based on AI, basically. So we're making smart technology. I came into a point at sennder when we were 3 people in product. Now I think we're almost 16. And so in total, I think 100 people in tech.
So up next, we'll have Stephanie and then Niharika after that.
I can go next. Firstly, thanks for organizing this event, Vanipriya and Jatin. So I'm Stephanie. I'm a product manager. I've been in the product space for more than 7 years now, working for both growing startups and corporate companies across different industries, fashion, travel, and more recently, food delivery. So I actually joined Delivery here as a product manager last year. I joined what we call the quick commerce, or the Q-commerce. In case you haven't heard this new concept, it's basically the way we see it is kind of the next generation of e-commerce, where we deliver in a very, very fast way, almost in real time. And yeah, I joined like the groceries, actually the groceries vertical, where we deliver groceries in 15 to 20 minutes.
I would love to receive my groceries in 15, 20 minutes. During the pandemic, where we are waiting in queue, right? Or
yeah. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. This is Niharika. I head product and tech at One Championship. One Championship is a sports media property. We're anchored on the sport of martial arts, headquartered here in Singapore, where I'm also based. I found a rather unconventional path to product. I started my career as a consultant at McKinsey & Company, post which I moved to a travel tech startup, but was working in revenue and corporate sales. And from there, I took the leap right into product. And now here at One, the team looks at everything One is doing in the digital space across platforms and assets that are owned and operated by us. So think a lot about fan engagement, direct to consumer, all done through our own digital platforms. So like it's probably been just about 14, 15 months into product. So I think I'm still pretty much learning, but very happy to answer any questions I could, especially in the 0 to 1 stage context, because at One Championship, while we are a really well-recognized and global large property, our product and tech journey is pretty nascent. So we're still in that space where we are finding our own product market fit on the digital side. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Niharika. So we will start with the basic question of how we all got into product management and what we felt when we first got into product management. right? I would like to hear stories from across the board to understand if you migrated into product management from a different space, like be it project management or business development or being a business analyst, or even UX or some less traveled path. So let's hear some stories of how you got into product management and what you felt when you first did that. We'll start with, again, Valentina.
So it's probably a path less traveled. My experience comes from customer support. And I moved from customer support directly into product management. So what usually frustrated me in customer support was the feeling that I had so much feedback to give and that ended up in a void, which I think is a problem in many in many companies in general, because it's very difficult to kind of choose what you get from feedback from the customer as one customer support person, or even if you're leading the team, you still don't have the full picture because there's a lot of data. And then you bring that to the product team, but it's just one input among the research they do, what they get from sales, what they get from the analysts, and it kind of feels insignificant from the customer support point of view. And so I wanted to understand why this is, and I started to look into product management, and at some point I thought, well, maybe I could do this too, and then kind of see how it looks like from the other side. And it was not like, okay, I'm going to do this, and the next day it happened, but I did a lot of research. I did some courses about digital product management. I reached out to a lot of people that I admire and people that I know, and actually here Twitter was amazing, to kind of ask very specific questions. And I can really recommend that to anyone who starts anything new anywhere. Find the people that you're like, oh, wow, they do this amazingly. And don't reach out and say, hey, do you want to be my mentor? But reach out and tell them, hey, I admire you because of this and that. And I really was impressed by this that you did there. And I have this situation now. I've tried this, it didn't work. And now I'm thinking about option A or option B. What is your view on this? Because we are all very, very busy, and product people know this very well. There's always too much to do. But if somebody asks me a very specific question, I usually have an opinion. It just needs to be specific enough so that I don't have to work on having an opinion, but I have one when I see the question. And then I will always answer back, even if it's just 3 lines. So with this strategy, I got a lot of input from very different people in product management, that because in the end, it's a science, but it's also an art. So everybody expresses the way they lead their product in their own way. So getting input from many different people can actually be very valuable in creating your own craft of product, so that the way you lead your product actually fits both the organization and your personality. So background customer support.
Thanks a lot, Valentina. I think that tip was is very essential. As a product management, we have to be over communicating and reaching out to people all the time, trying to understand if they have a buy-in in this product idea that we have, and also what kind of inputs that they can be able to provide us, and also understand as an end user what they would really like to appreciate in the product that we're trying to do. So that, I think that tip, whether you're a product manager or not, to reach out to people and get to know more, especially on what they're good at, rather than just, I know we are all used to a lot of these open-ended questions on LinkedIn which say, hey, could you be my mentor, without understanding the background of what they want to learn from us. So I think a very pinpointed question, or a very specific question with a very, with something in their mind that they're expecting, I think would also help us as mentors, or as senior professionals in the product management space as well. So I think that's a really good tip that Valentina has given for all the attendees as well here. Up next, can we have Evgeniya?
Yeah, so before getting my first job in product management, I had like 2 more jobs, which were more or less related to the field. So my very first job, basically I was studying. I was getting a bachelor degree in telecommunications, and then I was doing research in computer vision. And so my scientific tutor, he had a startup related to computer vision. It was basically like cameras which could understand like how many people are in the room, what is their gender, how do they move, and based on that, like the system could like make any decision. And then he invited me to be a part-time project manager. So basically that was one of my one of my first opportunities to actually start working directly with developers. And then afterwards, I moved to Paris to study in Sorbonne, and that was like a blended degree where I was supposed to study and work at the same time. And I was working as a business analyst in Air France, but so there it was not really about the requirements gathering, but it was more about playing with data. Like as an example, someone could come to me and say, okay, there is no like the revenue dropped on this revenue on this route. So please just have a look and tell us what happened. And basically, these are the types of tasks which are more or less similar to the product management. And besides that, I also had my own startup in the travel industry. So maybe when I was like 19 or 20, and I started going to various conferences, meeting entrepreneurs and asking them how they doing. And yeah, there I finally met the first product managers. I never knew that this profession is called like that. So when I just discovered it, I understood that, wow, this is exactly what I want to do. And yeah, basically after the graduation, I found my first job as a junior product owner, which took like a pretty long time, maybe like 4 months, even though I had like quite a good experience in more or less related fields.
Nice. I think I share the same background as you in terms of getting into product management pretty young and having a startup at around when I was 21. So my first job, I took up my first job keeping in mind that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I wanted to have my own product, build my own product and sell it. So I took a very conscious decision of getting into a startup where I wanted to learn things along with the management to understand how finance works, how business works, how a product being the core of the company that brings revenue, how that is modeled, right? As an end user, we might imagine a product very differently, but as a business, we have to imagine a product very, very differently. It needs to, translate into revenue, translate into more business to the company, right? So that's how I got into product management in my first job. Thankfully, it was a small startup within a larger organization. So I had the freedom to walk around, understand the business in depth from a client's perspective, from the end user perspective, also from the operations perspective. So given that I had a lot of learning space to understand different aspects of a product, it really helped me to grow, multiple bounds. It was just not understanding from a very small end user. It was a very huge user base. The domain was publishing. At that time, e-publishing and mobile app development was just coming up. So it was a nice space to be, to understand. And even product management at that point of time, probably 11 years ago, was not, we've seen product management as a profession grow a lot in the past 2-3 years. It has not been this established. Probably 10 years ago, I think project management was much more established at that point of time, wherein people are going for PMPs, getting certified, trying to understand and put processes. So that was the time I was getting into product management. And given that I'm basically an engineer and I could code things, I could take a dig at coming up with prototypes and making some screens and stuff like that, so that it was easy for me to explain to my user what is the product that we are trying to come up with. So that was my first experience at product management at that point of time. Okay, up next, we'll go with Irina.
Yeah, so I think I have a huge different background or entry point into product management. So I went to university like everybody else, into broadcasting actually. After this, I studied acting, so I was always in theater and film productions. But as you know, acting is a tough business, so I was working at software companies on the side, which was usually customer service and marketing due to my broadcasting experience. And I think this was actually quite the best start, to be honest. It's like, if you have the marketing experience and the customer service experience, especially when you are in a tech company. So I was working for a software company that was building software for researchers. And I think it helps to look at the user perspective, right? And to really empathize on the users and be empathic towards them. And to also really understand that, the feedback that they're giving you is like the most important things that you actually can have when it comes to building the products that are relevant. Or also like that you at some point need to think of, when you build a product, how do you create a need, right? Like how do you get users to use it? And I think coming from a customer service perspective, it really helped. And what happened then is that I just randomly got acquired by a company that said they would like to have non-techie people with marketing customer service experience, but they're actually looking for product managers. I had no idea what product management was. They were really well at training me and putting me into context with a lot of good people that were super experienced. So they gave me coachings. I went to conferences. I gave my first speeches at universities, all these kind of things. So I think it was really about being interested, and also, as Valentina said, going to people and talking to them, right? Just like what I like about product management is that you actually can exchange on a quite intellectual level, because it combines so many fields, right? It's as Valentina said, it's like art and science mixed all together. So that was my experience.
Absolutely, it is an art and science by itself, unlike any other. So yeah, Stephanie.
Yeah, so I think like many of us, I got into product management quite in a random way. I have a business degree. Actually, in e-commerce, I was always kind of in the space of tech and product. I started as a project manager, like for a couple of digital projects, yeah, and with a huge focus like on UX. I left, so I'm originally from Paris, and I left Paris to go to Australia, Sydney, where I joined growing startups. I would say wasn't startups anymore, but was a growing startup, and I joined as a UX manager. And what happened, I had to take over the launch of a mobile app while my manager was on holiday. And I kind of took over a product position, kind of in an interim while he was away. And it went so well that basically I got promoted to a product management position. And I think what helped me while he was in the interim was really about identifying the key features that are relevant for customers, and really about building. So it was about launching our first iOS app, building like a shopping experience that would be relevant for customers, being really good at prioritizing, which is really important when you're launching a new product, getting things done and having like a really good communication across the teams. I think this is what kind of helped me to get into product management. And yeah, that's pretty much my story.
Nice, Stephanie. So Niharika, you told me that it's been very recent.
Yeah. I answered your question already. Apologies for that in the intro, but I'm happy to repeat it. Like I said, and I think hearing all of your responses, I was actually going to say that, like you said, right, Vanipriya, product management wasn't really a function 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even 3 years ago. So it's not surprising that everybody here found a very random path into product management. The truth is that we were probably all doing parts of product management, but it was just not called that. And the other bit I'd say about product management is, when Valentina says that she joined from a customer support point of view, I actually think it's probably the best route, Valentina, you could have taken, because I think in my early learnings from product, whether you're in a late stage company or in an early stage company, if you're not brutally prioritizing what really the customer needs, you're going to fail anyway. Now, obviously, the difference there is in a late stage company, you have a lot of data coming in, which very quickly tells you what's working, what's not, what the potential needs could be. And in an early stage setup, there is no data. So you need to take a lot of gut calls. You need to use your intuition, but even for that gut and intuition to be developed, you need to be extremely close to your customers, right? So that's why that was not a surprising path for me. But for me, like I said, I started out as a consultant, and then I was working for a travel tech startup in India, where I was doing corporate sales and then heading revenue and P&L. So yeah, so didn't really touch product so much. But and the fun fact is that when I joined One Championship, I actually joined without knowing the role. So I got to know the role only the day I walked into office. So it was like, okay, I'm going to do product. But it's been a lot of fun because, for us, we're in that stage where while the company is like almost a unicorn and, we have global like scale, but on the tech side and on our digital offering, we're still figuring out what our play is. And so the role that we do at product today is very much like an early stage founder within a startup, right? We're trying to get really close to what our fans say, what do they like. And a lot of features we're building out today are actually not even backed by data. They're backed by a lot of intuition and gut, but we're able to develop that intuition and gut and take some good calls only because we really try to read the market. We really try to immerse ourselves in our fans' lives. And as you can imagine, martial arts, not really the background I was coming from or most of the product teams coming from. So we had to put in the additional effort to really get to know our fans and get a sense of a pulse of what they want. And I think that's super critical.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on that. Just to understand, since I think the audience is also a mix of startups and people who are founders, co-founders, I thought it might be interesting to just give some background on how we if we have the background of setting up teams and there are a few entrepreneurs in the mix as well. So what was the how did you go about setting up a product team or a product company beyond just product management itself? You have to deal with people, you have to hire people. More than hiring people and managing them day to day, it's also the buy-in that you have to get from your team, right? They have to really believe in the product that we are building. It's just not like you come, you show up for 8 hours work, get some Jira tickets closed and go back. It's more than that. They have to believe that this is an interesting problem to solve. This is an interesting product that the users would really use and get benefited, and so on and so forth. So that kind of interesting experience is what I would like to hear from all of you, so that it also talks about startups and the hardships that we might cross doing so. So at my role in my current company, Full Potential Solutions, I was the first person in India to join them, and I was tasked with setting up the product management function itself. So I was just having a laptop at home, trying to hire people from my network, trying to establish that this is a company in the US, we want to put it up in India. This is the product. The product was all in the air. It was just a shell that was given to me. So there were no screens, nothing. But then it was just an idea that I had to sell it to them. There are multiple things I was selling. I was selling a job. I was selling the product. I was selling the ideology behind the company, the vision of the management. So I think like the first customer is the most important thing for the revenue. I think it's also the first person who joins you sets the tone for the entire rest of the team. And like it happens in sales, the first 10 customers, then it starts rolling. So I think getting the first 10 people in your team who form the crux of how your culture is going to evolve over the next couple of years was the most essential thing to do at the point of starting your team or starting your startup. So I think at that point of time, not only did we have to believe and trust in the product that we have, we also had to have people who would trust in you and join your team. And we had this whole nice little team that was forming up that would form the basis for more people to join us. And I think most thing about products, other than the branded marquee companies, especially startups, it's your human contacts that you have on LinkedIn or in your previous jobs that become essential for you to hire your teams. So any interesting thoughts on how you went about your startup journey or your team journey? Who would want to go first? Anybody can put up your hand and get started. Unmute yourselves in. Okay, Niharika.
Yeah. All right. So I honestly think that when you're just starting out on the journey of launching a new product and you're not really sure about what that product would even look like. What you're running with is literally this vision you have, right? This idea that could at some point form into something that's really valuable in the future. I think the first few people you hire in the team are super critical to just the success that you will achieve as a company going forward, at least in the short term. And I personally, I think, spent at least 50% of my time just hiring the right initial members of the team. And you're right, it's extremely hard to do so because you don't really have any glorious tales of success to share. In my case, it was slightly easier because at least I was hiring for a company that was extremely famous, even though we were starting the tech company, from scratch, or the tech team from a pretty low base. But even then, a lot of times I got asked the question that you're a sports company, why do you need tech? Or, today 0% of your revenue comes from tech. So, why is it impactful? So I think yourself being super clear about what is the vision, even if it's not concrete like a roadmap. I think being very clear about how this is going to shape up, or at least the direction you want to take, and then you also end up attracting the kind of people who are okay with ambiguity. Everybody cannot survive a startup, and I think we're all pretty familiar with that. You need a particularly honed skill for handling ambiguity and yet thriving in ambiguity, and being slightly crazy, I would say, to be able to bite into a vision or a dream when it doesn't exist at all. So I think in all of my hiring for the early members of the team, what I found is, while of course their product background mattered and ref checks mattered, I think what was most critical was the softer skills in the person. And while some of it might have come from a network, I think it took a lot of time and energy. I don't think just the network sufficed either. And I do remember spending 50% of my time in the first 3 to 4 months only hiring, like getting rejected a lot, just randomly reaching out to a lot of people, talking to them and figuring out if this was the right culture fit for somebody who can work in a startup. So yeah, that's my experience.
I have a little tip for those who are doing their startup remotely, which at the moment is kind of necessary. At Klaus, once people come in their hiring round onto my table, basically, the interview is via chat. So I don't have a call to do the interview, but we use Discord or Skype or wherever where we can chat back and forth. Because like writing is such an important soft skill when you're not sitting in the same office, that you are able to clearly articulate what you're thinking, what your ideas are, what you can do, what you want to do. And this is something that in interviews that are via Zoom or even in person, you can't really realize how good they are when it comes to expressing themselves, especially because not everybody has English as a native language. So some people are really good at talking, but then when it comes to writing, it's more of a challenge. And I want to know this before we actually start working with each other. And since I'm one of the remote people, my communication with everyone is heavily relying on text. And I cannot jump on a call every 3 seconds to answer somebody's question. So I need them to do not just, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I don't know. Depends what the question is. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. So just give me the question as well. So by making the important parts for your company culture part of the hiring process, you can already kind of eliminate risks that can come up once the person is already onboarded, when it would be very costly to realize, oh, you make a mistake. So see what is crucial and what is different in your company culture to the, not that there is a standard company culture, but something that other people would find weird or different or may not have that much experience in, and see if you can introduce this into the hiring process.
I think that's a great tip, Valentina. Just given that most of us are working remotely, and I think this trend is going to go on for some time until there's an answer for COVID, right? So I think that's a very essential pointer to note down, especially for hiring folks here. So any of those product managers building your team, I think that's something that you have to take into account. Anybody else would like to go on this question? Yeah.
Just to add on that, yeah, I think it's really important to be able to clearly articulate a story behind, to have like a proper storyline. But also, I think it depends what's the current phase of your product, of your company, because there's different types of product people. You have product builder who are more about shipping products. You have product people who are more focusing on planning, on strategy. And I believe if you're a founder, you may have already like the vision, but you wouldn't know, how like to ship that vision. And this is where you would look for more like for product people who are great skills to be able to ship products. While you're growing as a founder, I believe you focusing less on the product vision because you need to focus more on the company vision. And this is where you would like to have like more strategic product people who can build like a proper product vision while you still have like those product shipping people. So I think it's really important to have a really good understanding of the phase of your product or the phase like of your company and what kind of PM you are looking for. The next thing is, I think communication is very important because as a product person, you need to influence people. You kind of enabling the people around you, like the engineering team, the marketing team, to build a better product, to market a better product. And you need to influence those people. So communication, written, or like speaking skills are very, very important. And I think the last thing that I want to say, we always talking about empathy. And to me, empathy is also like being a really good listener. It's not only about understanding people, but it's also about listening to people. I think lots of product people are going straight to solutions sometimes and forget about, focusing on a problem. I'm always starting with why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this in this way? What's the actual problem? So those questions is, I think it's really about being a good listener and having like a good way, to argument why you want to do things in that way.
Absolutely. I think more than understanding, listening seems to be the key skill that all product managers have to have. Because I think understanding from our perspective is just going to be, you look at a lot of things and then gauge something, but listening to people's stories and why they do what they do is something that gives a bit more advantage of coming up with a solution. You're right. Most people or most product managers or most technical architects jump to a solution right away without a lot of these backgrounds. So I think building the story or building the foundation for the product to be more sustainable is important when you have all these user stories and customer experiences built in. Anybody else wants to go on this question, or can you move on? Okay.
So I completely agree with previous speakers about like the importance of the soft skills. I guess there are a few more things which I personally check at the interviews. So for me, firstly, it's very important to see the logic. So it's about like a person being able to build those, consequence chains back and forward. It's more like a McKinsey style questions. Like, I think one of the last questions I was asking is like how many train wagons are in the Moscow metro. So these are the sort of questions where you need to like guesstimate, build like the whole logic around, and maybe most probably you won't really get the right answer, but at least to see that, there is like a logic behind that. So this is one thing. And another thing is that it feels like people are getting better in going through interviews. So what is also very important for me is to give the homework. And as Stephanie was telling, there are like so many types of product managers, and depending on the task, you pick up the right one. Maybe here you need more like a technical person. In another project, you need someone who is really good in UX and research. Another one is like a strategy, is somebody focused on strategy. So depending on that, I usually give the homework. And for me, it's very important how the person is going to do that.
Absolutely. I think some of these open-ended questions just to understand how the thought process of candidates work is something very essential. Okay, jumping on to the next question. Jatin, do we take questions now, or can you go around with the panel?
Yeah, so we'll take one or two questions that were being asked. So I'll just kind of take a gist from that. So one of the critical thing comes like when you speak to people about product management, they'll say that talk to customers. But you talk to a lot of customers, you get a lot of different point of views. So how do you decide that like this particular insight from this customer is something that I will take on, or any specific anecdote you can share in your product building process?
So I'm from my perspective, Irina, I'll go now.
Yeah.
Okay. So from my experience, right, I've learned it the hard way. I've always realized that as a product manager, your very key skill set is to say a very firm no, right? More no's than very less yeses, because it's very easy, and because most product managers are very enthusiastic to ensure that there's this customer delight thing that has to be satisfied or up to the mark, that when a customer wants something, we would really want to give them that. But then as things move on and as we understand the business better, we have constraints of people, we have constraints of resources, the cost that goes into building a lot of the features, weighing in on every one of these features across many things, right? Your customer retention, your ability to deliver it within time, and some of these needs the customer might ask would be very time bound, right? It might be useful for them today, might not be useful 6 months down the line. So a lot of these constraints, which are very, very important to your core business and how you can handle it as a feature for an extended period of time, are factors that I usually look into. And as we grow as product managers, I've learned that there are very nice ways to say a no than just a on your face no kind of thing. So we also grow as people to communicate better in a very nice way, so that the customer understands that there are better things that the product could offer them, which would help them do their tasks or do work with the product in a very better way.
Awesome. So probably you can give one-line answer, so we can take one more round of questions from Vanipriya. Irina, you wanted to respond to that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what industry you are in, right? And how your product is built out. Because if you're a product manager and your company is based on, building solution for big enterprises and you have to do tailored solutions, I think this is when you really need to go into discussion and look into, okay, what value does it bring us if we build this feature versus the complexity and the money we spent on it, right? But I think like in my case, for instance, we're still B2B, but we have a lot of users because we're building like on a B2B to C aspect, if you like. In this case, we still do qualitative research, of course. So we do actually go to customers. We facilitate a lot of focus groups, for instance. At least that's what I used to do at Rocket a lot. Focus groups like once a month, where you would get like 3, 4, 5 people. And this is the whole aspect is just of getting to know them, understanding like their daily life almost, right? Because in the B2B context, you are building something that helps them work. So you really need to understand what they do all day and why they do it. And then also, of course, like what pain points they have in their daily work. And then we usually break it down into what are the biggest pain points in the flow, for instance, of like, or in the user journey when it comes to our products, but also looking at the customers from, not constantly looking into what is the product and what does the product for the customer, but actually, cool. So customers, what is it that is really painful to you? And then usually it's in the same industry, right? You have similar pain points. And then I would usually evaluate complexity versus value. Also, like, what is the long term of this? Is it really helpful? In this qualitative research, we usually pair with quantitative research.
Actually, like what you said about the asking why they want this is like one of the most powerful questions you can ask. And actually, usually you don't asking them why do you want it is usually not enough. You probably have to go dig a little bit deeper, because very often customers aren't even aware themselves why they want this thing. So by digging in together with them, you can actually find out the why, like what the real pain point is. And then the solution might look very different to the feature that they ask you. So I'm always very, very about, oh, there is this feature request. It's like, yeah, okay, it's a feature request, nice. But what is this feature supposed to solve? Like, what's the pain point? Why do we want to do this? And are there maybe other solutions to help that? So another tool that can be here really helpful is to get the team together and look at what are 3 different options how we could solve this pain point apart from the solution that the customer came up with. And if you do this not only with your tech team, but actually mixing people from marketing with people from customer support with people from accounting, you can get really interesting insights from people that have interest outside your own company. Because if you have usually entrepreneurs and people in startups, the startup might be their baby, but they usually have a lot of interests because they are like curious, and we can use this. But maybe you don't know that your accountant on the side is running a business school to teach kids to code, whatever, and they might have very interesting insights themselves. So like once you have understood the why, finding a solution to more people than just to your inner team, which might have created unintentionally a little bubble that you're kind of imprisoned in, can be really, really helpful. So ask why and look for more than one solution so you can actually choose the best one.
Yeah, and I think just to add on that, sometimes between what people say and what they want, there's a huge gap. So I think it's really important to identify patterns. So let's say when you're running like customer interviews, just, okay, run them all, try to identify some patterns, but also try to make some correlations with your data. So if you already have an existing product with some quite a good traffic, then what you could do is also check like your contact ratio. What are like the pain points that you're getting, from your customer service? That's also one way to make some correlation, but also just to look into your data. So that could be when you have a funnel where people are dropping off, and does it correlate with, they've been having some issues on the way, like to search or to filter. So I think like making correlation is very important.
So I'll just take, I think Irina has answered in the chat, but just to talk about it. So there's a question from Bhavin asking about the tools that you use for customer interviews. Any specific ones that you want to talk about?
I can go here. So here, we've been using like multiple tools. So usually we always building prototypes and we use InVision to do this. And we've been recently trying like a new tool, Maze, which is quite great, like to include your prototype and also turns into like customer insights. So that means that it kind of like already straight away identify like the patterns that you're having like in your customer reviews. So I had a pretty good experience like with Maze, and I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, we also use InVision for anything that comes with design or building prototypes. We have tools implemented like Amplitude or Hotjar, for instance, to see how the behavior is within the product and also what features get what type of traction. We have quite a good BI team that sets up tracking and boards, of course, to look like, but there's like all the in tools. And then what we are now starting to look into on the qualitative side is Google surveys, basically. Especially when it comes, we are thinking of changing namings and brandings, and this is what we're currently doing.
Anyone else wants to go on about the tools? All right. So I'm just trying to put the links for these tools in the chat for attendees to look into whenever. Yeah, Stephanie has also added. Yeah, before I hand over the session back to Jatin in around 8 minutes, I'll leave the panel open for the other speakers to say anything that we have missed out so far. So let's take a roundtable on this. Who wants to go next? There's this Silence of death here. Anyway, okay, let's do another question then.
I can mention something if you want.
Go ahead.
So if you are in charge of product, make sure there is a clear bridge to customer support. Like, don't just see them as the little minions who keep the customers away from you so that they don't bother you with unnecessary feature requests, but work together with them. And it's when you have big product decisions, have somebody from support sit at the table, because they are really good in asking questions about how this will impact existing customers, which is something that's very easy to forget when you're super focused on this amazing new thing that you're going to bring out. Having a customer representative at the table can kind of mitigate a little bit. And on the flip side, as a product person, you should report back to customer support about what you're doing in product and why you are doing it. One of the things that we started at Klaus is that I go twice a month to the customer support meeting, and then they ask me, this customer is screaming super loud and they are stressing us out, but this hasn't been done yet, why? And then I have to explain why prioritization by who screams loudest is not a good idea, but what other priorities we have, so that they understand that I'm not making these decisions to make their life harder, but because there is a bigger company vision behind, which is a great way for you to reinforce the company vision or the product vision and actually make sure that everybody is on the same page. And the better your customer people understand where you're going, the easier it is for them to represent this to the customers.
There's just one thing I want to add, which is that to all the early stage founders, because I believe we have a lot of early stage founders in the audience, we know that when you start out, you're probably doing every function yourself. But if it ever comes down to a choice, I would say the two functions that early stage founders must definitely head and you should own yourself. One is the sales bit, and the second is product. Because especially in the early stage, when you're still doing your product market discovery, to the extent possible, if you're the founder, you should head product yourself and you should head sales yourself.
And on this notch, once you grow, I think it's also important to remember or to build a culture around that you as a founder or you as who owns the product can also give up the product and trust your team to actually build a proper product. Because I think like what people tend to forget in product business or software business is that actually we build software for people and the software is being built by people. And I think this is core.
Absolutely, Irina. I think the people factor is very important from both sides, not just one side, right? So I think given that we have like a few minutes, two things that we didn't touch during this this discussion was stakeholders and competitors. So all your 2 cents on this. How do you manage competitions? How do you keep abreast of what's happening with your competitors? And also, how do you answer your CEO? I think Valentina already spoke about it, but then there's always this tendency to overpromise. I mean, underpromise and overdeliver. Is that a good thing? What is your thoughts on this?
So I can start. So here at DH, at Delivery Hero, we have lots of stakeholders. And we have like stakeholders across different regions. So in APAC, so in Asia and Middle East, in South America, also like in Europe. And one thing that I've noticed is it's a very delivery culture. So we're always talking about all the features that we want to ship and so on. And I think what we're trying it's not a thing, but what we're trying to change or to challenge is let's focus on more on the problems that we want to solve in this quarter. Because sometimes you're going to ship lots of features, but it's not necessarily going to solve the problems that you're having. So at the end of the quarter, you're still having the same problem, although you ship all these features. And that's the reason why we're now kind of trying to challenge the culture and have like, okay, this is the KPI where we want to have an impact in this quarter. And here are the problems that we believe that are related to this KPI and that we want to solve. And then once we agree on this is where we're going to start talking about, we're going to do some discovery, exploration, and start coming up with some features that we're going to communicate later in the quarter. But I think it's really, really important to agree on what are like the key KPI, or like having also a North Star metric and the problems that you want to solve, and agree and align on those. And then the features are coming later. So that's I think, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to add here.
We'll just take this question from Anupam. Top 5 skill sets that are critical for a product manager. I think one of them is understanding data, where you get the data from, how you analyze data from, and how you can make sense of the data that you have got from your research, and how that translates into your into your product. So I think understanding and appreciating data is something that's very important, at least right now. I think I'll not tell all the 5. You guys can take one each.
I think one skill which I have found extremely important is the ability to ask the right questions. So we all know problem solving is like an essential skill set for product managers, but I think in my experience, I've found the ability to just ask the right question a great first step to even finding what you want to find.
Irina wrote empathy in the chat, with knowledge on research, business strategy, and architecture basics, and that gets a huge +1 for me. Like, listening is an underrated skill. Like, we all need to learn to listen and then ask the right questions, because that's where your data in the end comes from.
Yeah, +1 on this too. I think being curious, asking questions, is the top. Listening, like to those answer, being a good storyteller. I know we all talk about storytelling, but as I say, being like in product, you need like to pitch your ideas, you need to pitch your vision, you need to pitch your strategy, you need to influence those people around you. So I think being able to create like this storyline and pitch it is very, very important to be a good storyteller, which means also having like really good communication skills. On top of that, what I wanted to add, I think it's very important when you're in product. It's also about getting things done. This is something that we sometimes like forget about it. Sometimes you can have like a great vision, but if you don't get anything done, your vision is not going to go anywhere. So yeah, like do not procrastinate, just also get things done.
I probably would add also like critical thinking. So basically, you know, there are so many things going around, like many people sharing their views, customers coming and as Valentina was talking, like screaming loudly. But then critical thinking is something which will basically help us to understand if something is needed or not, why are they doing that? And then at the end, it will help us to prioritize stuff.
We have a very enthusiastic Jatin back, so which basically means it's time for us to wrap the session up. Thanks a lot, ladies.
Jatin, I wanted to add with one. So typically now that there are 2-3 ways we try to end. So one is a convocation style message that you give, but last one we tried, and this is something will let us try this. So product management has a lot of skill sets that you could be good at. If you were to get one superpower, what that superpower could be in this context. And we will end the call with the last speaker ending the sentence so that we will end this session on a high. So Vanipriya, since you are moderating the session, what is that one superpower you would like to have?
One superpower is if I could get into the heads of all my users so that it lessens my time to understand them, dig deeper. You know, if I could just see it all in one shot as soon as possible, that's a lot of time that I can save.
Awesome. No repeat answer. So that superpower has been assigned to Vanipriya. Niharika?
That's not fair. That was exactly my answer. I would love that too. I guess the other superpower, if I could just move time at a faster pace and kind of like, you know, because I don't know how many of you would empathize with this issue, but You come up with an idea, you do the PRD, the concept is clear, and then engineering, just getting it out takes a lot of time, right? And then you put it out to the market, then you get feedback on whether it works or not. You've already lost a lot of time. If I could just really quicken that, my entire cycle of iteration and experimentation, I think.
Niharika, I'll have to cut short because immediately we'll have to start another session. So rest of the
I'm done.
one word, one superpower. So Niharika, that superpower has been assigned to you. Evgeniya. What? You have to unmute yourself.
I think the ladies pick up the best ones. Yeah, maybe for me, that would be an ability to test all the hypotheses and make whatever testings as quick as that.
Awesome.
And, have all the data.
Yep.
ready.
So just awesome. Thank you so much. One word, Valentina.
I want to clone myself so that I can entertain the kids when there is a pandemic and they are home while I can still do my job. It's something very basic, but like focus time is so important.
Stephanie.
Superpower would say predicting. All about prediction. I'm super believer like in AI and prediction models in general. So yeah, that would be mine.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone. I've shared the LinkedIn thread. So in case if you have more questions, you can ask over there. And Irina, once you end your sentence, I'll close the call. What is one superpower you like?
Stephanie took mine. I think the other one would be inspire people to try new things and buy the software built.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. See you on social media.
Bye.